Over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to take you through all the key tools provided by Crocoblock's Jet Engine plugin. I'll cover the basics of getting started with Jet Engine. I'll also cover the core tools, how to get started with them, and what the terminology means, and much more. Now, if you're not sure what Jet Engine is for or what dynamic content is when it comes to WordPress, I would suggest watching this video first and then come back to this video with a solid understanding of dynamic content and dynamic design. Okay, to follow along with this tutorial, I would suggest you have the following installed on a clean copy of WordPress: the latest version of Jet Engine, a copy of Elementor and Elementor Pro. Although you can do most of what I'll cover in Gutenberg, I will also cover that in its future video on its own. And also the Hello theme. Got all that ticked off? Cool. Let's just get the ball rolling right now. Now, once you've gone ahead and installed Jet Engine, you're going to have a new entry in your dashboard under Jet Engine. And inside there, you can see there are a lot of options. As I've said at the top of this video, we're not going to be covering everything in this video. We're going to be covering all of these options over a series of videos to make them accessible to everybody and allow you to jump in and jump out as and when you see fit. What we are going to concentrate on today, though, is Jet Engine itself, the core kind of function. So if we open up Jet Engine, inside there, you'll see we have a range of different tools, modules, skin manager, those kinds of things. Let me just quickly run through what they are. If we take a look at the available modules, you can see we have a selection currently of about 10 or 12 different options inside there. You'll also notice that some of these have different icons associated with them. You can see we have the Elementor icon, which means that Elementor is required to use this, or we have the option for blocks, which is part of Gutenberg, which basically means that if you've got things like this QR code, you can use that either with Elementor or with Gutenberg. If you see Gutenberg is grayed out, we can't use Gutenberg for that particular feature. Now, as Jet Engine is expanding, we are finding that there's various additional tools that are coming on board that allow you to get a lot more creative and actually use Gutenberg over Elementor. So if you don't want to use Elementor, you want to rely upon blocks as part of Gutenberg and keep things clean and simple, but still want to use Jet Engine, you can do that with a lot of the features. So you can see there are a lot of options inside here. All of these are currently disabled, and as we go through this series of videos, I will start to enable a lot more of these and you can see how they work. But for now, we're going to leave those all disabled. Under the skins manager, you can see we can import or export skins, and we can also deal with presets. We're not going to worry about that in this particular video. It's not that important for what we want to cover. You've also got the shortcode generator, which again is a bit more of an advanced feature, which allows us to create custom shortcodes to use various different features that are part of Jet Engine itself. And finally, we have glossaries, which is a fairly new feature. You can see I currently already have a glossary inside here, and if I expand this, you can see what we have. Now, I'm going to go into glossaries in their own dedicated video, much the same as a lot of the other features we have. But let me just briefly tell you what a glossary is. If you were dealing with something like a select field, so for example, a drop-down list or a checkbox list, for example, in this case, we've got property features, so things like, does it have a garage, a swimming pool, tennis court, and so on. Instead of having to use those and input those manually every time you create a front-end form, every time you create something to do with Jet Engine fields in the dashboard, various different places, including filters and searches, you don't want to have to go through the time and effort of replicating everything and making sure that all of the information is identical across all those different use cases. The new glossaries feature means we have one centralized location inside Jet Engine glossaries that you can see here that allows us to very easily be able to create a centralized location where we can then easily add, remove, change, update, and that will be reflected throughout everywhere that uses that glossary feature. We will briefly touch upon this in this video, but it will have its own dedicated tutorial to give you more details. One of the main things a tool like Jet Engine gives us is the ability to very easily add custom post types as well as adding custom meta fields to those post types. We're not restricted to those features though, but let's just stick with those for now. Accessing, creating and editing post types with Jet Engine is very easy. All we need to do is come into Jet Engine itself and we're going to choose the option for post types. So let's open that up, and this allows us now to create our first custom post type. So what we're going to do is we're going to add new. And inside there, we can now break this down into 5 distinct sections. Not all of those are required, but I am going to cover each one of these just so you get an idea of how to get started. And we'll take a practical example as well. So, post type name. What are we going to call this specific custom post type? For our example today, we're going to call this properties. And then underneath, we've got the post type slug. Now, if you've been using WordPress for any amount of time, you know you've got the thing called the slug. And the slug is basically just the URL that's going to be used to go into that particular section. In this example, properties. So you'd have your domain, for example, mywebsitedomain.com / and then properties. And that's what this post type slug is for. Now, it's automatically generated when we're working with Jet Engine. However, you're not restricted to that. You can put whatever you want in there. The only thing you need to make sure is it does conform to these sort of restrictions, which means that it should only contain letters, numbers, and underscore or dash characters. So don't have spaces in there. Always separate those with an underscore or a dash. Otherwise, you can run into some problems. So it basically works in a very similar fashion to what you have with any kind of post type slug that's part of WordPress. We can then enable the edit post type meta box link, and this adds the, what I just said, to the post edit page. We're going to leave that disabled. We're not going to worry about that. Next up, we have the labels. Now, if you were coming over from something like Advanced Custom Fields or Custom Post Type UI or Toolset or any of those kinds of tools, you're probably familiar with setting up custom post types and also having the option to create custom labels. The labels are just basically what you'll see in the left-hand column or in various different parts of the interface in the dashboard of WordPress. So, for example, we can, if we want to, put in a custom singular name. We can put in a custom text for adding new. And also we can come through and we can see view items. So you can edit the text on here to whatever you want, or you can leave them completely blank and it will work with the default values that WordPress assigns to it. So for example, when we take a look at pages, you can see we've got all pages and add new. And if we come over to posts, you can see we've got all posts and add new. We've also got things like categories for taxonomies and tags and so on. So if you want to customize those for your new custom post type, simply drop the relevant value inside the relevant box. I'm going to leave those as they are because they don't need to be updated. We're going to go with those defaults. We're going to scroll right the way down and you can see we now have advanced settings. Let's open up our advanced settings. Again, you can leave this pretty much as it is. It's set up for most use cases, so don't feel like you need to do things inside here. So you can see we can do various things like controlling whether this custom post type we're creating is going to be a public post type. You may want to restrict access to this from authors and readers and therefore make it something that's dashboard admin only. You could do that inside here by making this not public, basically. Do you want to exclude this from the search option? Is it publicly queryable? Do you want to show inside the admin user interface? All those kinds of things. So again, leave these as they are unless you have a specific use case where you need to change something. Most cases, these are going to be perfectly fine. You can see we've got capability type, for example, and we've got this set to post, but you can set this things like pages and so on, and this will affect the different kinds of capabilities that will be assigned to it. And this can also be useful if you have multiple different user roles and you want to define what kind of capability those user roles can have when it comes to editing content. You might want to change things inside here that ties in with some kind of user role setup that you have. Important features we do need to take note of: has archive. One of the most common problems when you're trying to create an archive using something like Elementor Pro and you find that your custom archive isn't listed, or you can't create one and apply the conditions to it, generally is the case that the archive option is disabled and therefore Elementor cannot create and assign conditions to an archive that effectively it doesn't see. Hierarchical: if you want to have a hierarchy set inside your custom post type, you can set that up inside here if you want to. You can also do things like control the menu position. So we'll set this to be position 1. That will go at the top of our left-hand navigation. You can also change the menu icon inside here. So we're going to set this to be a house because it's kind of a bit more in keeping with properties. And then we've got the supports option. Now this is incredibly useful. When you create any kind of custom post type, and this isn't restricted to Jet Engine, this works pretty much across the board of any kind of tools that allow you to create custom post types in WordPress. What this allows you to do is choose what of the inbuilt features you have in WordPress itself that it can use as default. So at the moment, you can see this is supporting the title and the editor. So the title is the name of our custom post type, and the editor is basically the content area. Now, there's going to be cases where you don't need to have things like the content editor, the title and so on, and you can disable those by clicking on the X. Or you may want to add additional features in that you do want to use. So for example, in this case, we want to include the featured image, and we also may want to include something like the excerpt. All we need to do is click to open up the options, and you can see all of those options are inside here, and you should be familiar with these because these make up a typical WordPress post type on a standard copy of WordPress. So we're going to say we want the thumbnail featured image. You can see that now adds that in. And we can also come in and say we want to have something like the excerpt option. So now any custom post we create inside the property section will have these 4 features as default, and then any other features we add through meta fields will be added onto those key 4 features. Now that we've seen how to create a new post type, let's go ahead and add some meta fields to it, as well as make the post listing a lot more useful. Now, speaking of meta fields, this is the next set of options that we have, and this is where we can start to create our custom fields and apply those to our custom post type. So let's open this up. And you can see inside here, we have a range of different options, and these are context sensitive options. So as you choose different kinds of field types, and we have a lot of different options inside here, you will see different options underneath that. I'm not going to go through every single one of these because I think it's a little overkill. But once you kind of get a feel for it and you start to use these fields, you'll be able to fill out what you think is needed, and not everything is required. So let's just take a look at creating some initial content. So let's start off with a really simple option. Let's just set up the price field now. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop in the name for this, the label. And this label is basically just a visual representation. What's more important is the name ID, and that's what we'll use when you start creating template files to output the data that you want that's created as a custom meta field. Much the same as we saw with the slug, once we click inside there, it will automatically add in what it thinks is going to be based upon the label you've assigned. Again, you can't use spaces or anything other than a number or a letter, and if you have a space in there, you have to replace that with a dash or an underscore. So just bear that in mind. The object type, we have 4 options inside here, and we're going to take a look at 2 or 3 of these today. We're not going to take a look at an endpoint, because an endpoint's a little bit more advanced. We are going to take a look though at fields, tabs, and accordions. Now, kicking things off with a field is exactly as you would expect it to be. It's just the standard, bog standard meta field, and that's exactly what we're creating now. So this price is a standard field. We can then choose what field type it is. In other words, what content is it going to contain? And as you can see, Jet Engine currently gives us quite a lot of different options. For this example, because it's going to be a price, therefore it's going to be numeric, we're simply going to come down and set this to be a number field. Once we choose that, you can see now this opens up some different context-based options. So a minimum and a maximum value, if you want to apply a step value inside there, those kinds of things. If you want to drop descriptions in, which can be useful if you have complex forms or things that you think people would just want some clarification on, what they need to insert into that particular form field, you can drop a description inside there. You can also control the field width, and as you can see, we have a range of different options to specify how wide the field is. So smaller fields generally don't require entire 100%. You can tidy things up as you see fit. Default value, if you want to drop a default value inside there, you can do, and if you want to apply conditional logic, you can do that here. And conditional logic just basically allows us to specify whether this particular field will be available to us based upon a rule. If we click on new rule, you can see we can do things like choose a field. So in other words, we could have a checkbox field that if that's checked for some reason, it then opens up some extra fields that are set up to be controlled by conditional logic. We can just set that up using this condition. And you can see we've got the field. We can choose what field type when we create more fields, the operator, and what value has to be met. For our example today, we don't require any conditional logic, but it is incredibly simple to set up and can be really useful when you have long or large comprehensive forms that require to be filled in, and you just want to make sure that only the relevant data is going to be filled in based upon various different conditions. Okay, let's uncheck that. Let's just have a quick look through here. And what we're going to do is we're going to set this up and say we're happy with that. We're going to say we're going to add a new meta field in. Once we do that, we can, if we want to, close this first one down just to compact it, give us a little bit more room. On top of that, we also have the option, before we take a look at this next field, to duplicate this and also to delete it. And finally, we have the option to move this around inside the stacking order. So you might add a field in a little later and require that to be in a different position. You can just drag and drop these elements around, really easy to do. Okay, so now we've done our price. Let's do our next field, which is going to be location. And we're just going to put in location. You can see that will automatically create the name and ID. Field, again, is perfectly fine. Field type, for this example, text is fine. We just want a plain old vanilla text box. And what we're going to do is we're going to leave everything inside there. And we're just going to say add another meta field in. This time, we're going to choose to the option for the number of bedrooms. So we're going to just type in bedroom, put a capital at the beginning, just to keep it all nice and neat and tidy. There we go. Again, we're going to set this to be a numeric option. And minimum value, we're going to set to be 1. We're not going to set any maximum because obviously you pretty much, if you're going to sell a house, you want to have at least 1 bedroom in it. Otherwise, it's not really much of a house. Again, we can set any values we want inside there. So for this example, we're going to set the field width to be 33%. And we're going to add another meta field in. This time, this one's going to be for bathrooms. So we're going to just repeat the same process. Again, underneath, come down, choose, set this to be number, minimum value. We want to have at least 1 bathroom in there. And we're going to set this to be 33% as well. And then finally, we're going to add 1 more meta field inside that little group. And this one is going to be for en-suites. You can see that automatically replaces where I put the space in the label with a little dash. So that's perfectly fine. It's automatically doing it for us. And again, we're going to set this to be number. And we're not going to set any minimum or maximum value on there, but we are going to set this to be 33%. Okay, so we've now created a couple of fields. But we want to sort of group these together because we want to add more fields in that just don't really kind of fit into this particular group. So can we do that inside Jet Engine? Absolutely. It's really actually quite simple. So let's just add a new meta field. And this takes us back to what we talked about a little earlier. Let's call this basic information. Again, let it automatically generate that. But this time we're going to change the object type from field, and this time we're going to choose the option for tab. And you can see now that changes all the information. We have no ability to put in extra information because it's just a tab. It's just a placeholder that kind of encompasses the next group of meta fields. We can choose between a horizontal and a vertical layout if we want to. And now what we need to do is actually reposition this because at the moment our basic information is sitting underneath. So the tab will be created at this point and none of these options would sit inside that tab. So what we need to do is just simply drag this up to the top or wherever you actually want to position it, drop it there, and you can see that automatically indents all of the other meta fields that are going to sit inside that particular tab. So now we've done that, let's add another tab in, doing exactly the same thing again. We'll just select this option. We're going to come in and we're going to say this is going to be features. Again, we'll let that pre-fill out the name and ID. We're going to set this to tab again. And as you can see, that now pushes it back. So no longer is it indented inside here because Jet Engine is smart enough to know that you're going to create a new tab. Therefore, it's not going to be part of this first tab. So there's our second tab. We're going to set this to be horizontal as well. And now we're going to create another field group inside here. So let's just say new meta field. This time we're going to call this property features, and we're going to just select underneath, automatically pre-fill that out for us. The field type is perfectly fine, and we're going to set this to be a different option. This is going to be a checkbox. It allows us to create a group of checkboxes so people can choose whatever features are available for this particular property. So let's just open this field type up, and we're going to come down and we're going to choose the option for checkbox. Again, now you see we get a whole different range of options. So let's take a quick look. Allow custom. Do we want whoever's going to be able to add properties in and apply details to them to be able to automatically add their own custom options into this particular property features section? If you want to, you can enable that option, and then it'll allow them to save the custom fields as well. So you wouldn't have to do that round tripping kind of thing to go back and forth and add extra features in. Up to you if you want to sort of allow this. It would depend upon the kind of user levels, user roles and access you wanted to give them. Now the next thing is we can choose to get the options from a glossary. Now, even though we haven't covered glossaries in much detail, we've just brushed upon it. If I wanted to, and we will take a look at this in a moment, I can use the glossary I previously created and pull that data in. Or if I don't think I want to do that, I have no real need for it, I can simply come in and add a new field option manually. So you can see we can just come in, we can set the option value, the label, and whether this is a selected option by default. So you may have certain things that are automatically selected and you want people to uncheck them, or you could just set this option to be enabled and therefore that's automatically checked. What we're going to do though is let's just delete this from here. And let's just say I've already created that glossary. So I'm going to say I want to get the options from that glossary. So now I'm going to open this up. And you can see now all I need to do is choose what glossary I want to use. Now I've already created one. So I'm going to just choose the property feature glossary from there. Select that. And that's now enabled. I can now choose to save this as an array. So you can see this, if this option is enabled, checked values will be stored as plain PHP in an array. In other words, it just means each of the checked values will be separated by a comma. And there's various different reasons for doing that. So if we're going to allow a front-end form, which is something we will take a look at in a future video, we could enable this and allow that to be associated with it. Description, as we've already seen, if you want to drop a description in, you can do. Field width, we don't need to worry about that, and conditional logic is not something we want to worry about either. Okay, let's add one more meta field into this section, and what we're going to do is we're going to call this one feature description. We'll simply set the field type to be WYSIWYG. So this allows us to have a WYSIWYG editor so we can have a little bit of formatting and styling and so on. And yep, everything else looks fine in there. So let's just close these up a second, just so we can see what we're doing just a little better and our organization. So currently we have two different tabs inside here, the basic information with all these options and the features with these two options. What we're going to do is we're going to add one more tab in with one more meta field. So let's just add that tab in, and we're going to call this gallery, and we're going to come down, set this to be a tab, set this to be horizontal, and we're going to close that down. I'm going to add in our new field, and we're just going to call this image gallery. So this is for our additional images of the property. Allows us to keep it all nice and simple and organized. And what we're going to do is field type, we're going to just choose the option for media gallery. There we go, gallery, value format. You can see we can choose various different options inside there. So we're going to just say we want the media ID, and field width is perfectly fine. So now what we're going to do is we're going to close all that down. So let's take a quick look. We've got our basic information tab with all the custom fields inside there. We've got the features tab with our property features, which is a checkbox and also a WYSIWYG description. And finally, we have our gallery with an image gallery. Now, there are a couple of ways in which we can make our new post type list a lot more useful. And this is where admin columns comes in super handy. We'll now take a look at adding some of our custom meta fields to this page, as well as add in one of the main WordPress meta fields, as well as add in the ability to sort our custom data. Before we do take a look at actually setting up our admin columns, let's just take a quick example of what admin columns actually are in context with WordPress. So this is the pages section. This gives us a listing of all the different pages on our site, and it also gives us 4 different columns. These are admin columns. We've got the title, the author, any comments that are associated with it, or a number count in this case, and the date that this particular page was created or last modified. These are basically admin columns. So when we create our new custom post type using Jet Engine, we don't really have many options inside there. We'll just start off with the title, which is going to be the name of the property, and the date that this was posted or published, which is perfectly fine. But we've also got a lot more information inside here that would be really useful to allow us to filter and search and find the relevant types of properties. So it makes sense to actually go ahead and add some of that information in. It would also be useful to have a featured image thumbnail so we can see the property that we're looking for. Quick and easy visual way of finding that info. So let's have a look how we can do that. The admin column section allows us to add new columns in. So this is basically where we choose the admin column. This can kind of lead to a bit of confusion because at first it can seem kind of daunting. You might not necessarily know how to go about doing various different things or how to reference some key information. For example, the featured image is not immediately relevant. So let me just show you first of all how to do that. We'll start off with the featured image. So we'll just call this image. Then we've got the type. We currently have 4 different types of admin column fields and where we can source that information from. Meta value is basically any custom meta field we've created. So for example, our property features, the number of bathrooms, those kinds of things. The post terms is if we're creating taxonomies, we can reference a taxonomy. So when you start to group your custom post types together, for example, when we're keeping with the analogy of properties, you might have the property type. For example, houses, apartments, condominiums, those kinds of things. We can reference and pull those in as well, which can be incredibly useful. Post ID, which is a specific post ID kind of column, and custom callback, which allows us to reference various different features that are part of WordPress itself. And that's where we're going to start off. We're going to choose the option for custom callback. And then it says, what callback do you want to use? Well, this isn't something that most of us would really know too much about. And the nice thing is with Jet Engine, they've already created an easy way of us able to reference a lot of normal standard WordPress features without having to remember or type anything in. All we need to do is choose this select from existing callbacks. And you can see this now gives us a selection of common callbacks. Now, hopefully this will be expanded upon as more things come on board and we have more features. But for now, it gives us most of the things that we would actually want and need. So we want to put in the featured image, so we can do that. You can see we've got Jet Engine custom CB render image, for example, and you've got things like custom CB date, and it gives us information about it next to it. Well, let's just choose the right one, which is going to be this option, which is the CB render image. We'll select that option, and that says set the field thumbnail is perfectly fine. We can change that if we want to put something else inside there, and the size a numeric value. This is just a pixel value for the size of that thumbnail that's going to be displayed, and this is a square value. So even if you've got rectangular, it doesn't matter. It's still going to show it as a square. So 100 pixels is probably a little on the large side. So let's just say we'll set that to something like 75, and we'll just hit apply. Now what we can do is we can choose the column order and any prefix or suffix, and if we want to make certain things sortable. So for this example, column order, we want this to be the very first column inside our custom admin dashboard. So we're going to set 1 inside there. No prefix or suffix is required, and we can't make this sortable because at the end of the day, it's just an image. It doesn't make sense to try to sort that. So there's our first option. So we're going to just minimize that. Let's add another one in, and this time we're going to just create something from one of our custom meta fields. So the first thing we want to do is put the price in there. So let's just say we'll put price, and we'll put the currency that's going to be used inside there. Now we've got the type. Meta value is perfectly fine because this is coming from one of our custom meta fields. So all we need to do is put in the field name. Now, if you're not sure what the field name is, let's just simply scroll back up until we find the price field. And you can see if we expand that out, there's the name and the ID, which is price. We can simply copy that from there, scroll back down until we get to our admin columns, and we're simply going to put that into the field name. And that's all we need to do. Next up, we can drop in the column order. So we'll say we want this to be the third field, for example. A prefix is basically when the values are going to be output into the column, not the title of the column itself, the values. What do you want to put before it? Or if you want to use a suffix, you can put that after that. So we're going to say we're going to put the pound sign in there because we're dealing with the currency of UK pounds. We're not going to worry about a suffix, and is sortable. It makes sense to be able to sort these into their pricing. So let's just say, yes, we want to make that sortable. And is it a numeric field? Because we've set this up as a numeric field, again, if we scroll back up until we find this, you can see we've set this to be a number field. We can just simply tell Jet Engine that this is a numeric field. And there we go. So we've now set that up inside there. So I'm going to do the same thing again now for 2 more fields, doing exactly the same as what I've done with the price field, this time for bedrooms and bathrooms. And there we go. There's our 4 admin columns all set up. So the final thing we need to do is simply click on Add Post Type to commit all the things we've just done and create our new custom post type. Let's do that. And next up, we'll take a look. Now that we've set things up, let's look over the end result, add some data, and see how everything works together. With our custom post type created, you can see we have a new section in our dashboard called Properties, and inside there we've got Properties and Add New. Properties will list all the properties, and Add New, as its name would suggest, allows us to add a new property in. So let's take a look at the properties listing itself. This is where we've got a list of all the properties. Currently don't have any, but you can see the custom fields we created in the custom admin columns that we added in are now listed inside here. So things like the image, the title, the price, the bedrooms, the date, the bathrooms, and so on. So we can reorder these if we want to. For example, dates and bathrooms is in the wrong order. So all we need to do to change that is come back into Jet Engine, into our post types, and inside there's properties. We can click to edit that, and we can simply come down until we get to our admin columns, and we can adjust any of the values inside here. So for example, our bathrooms currently has no value set in there, whereas bedrooms is set to be column order 4. What we could do is now we can simply come back into bathrooms, and we can set the column order in there to be 5, for example, update our post type, hop back over to our properties, and just simply refresh this. And you see now date is at the end. So nothing we do is written in stone. We can very easily come back in and make changes to it, reorder things, change the names, the descriptions, all those kinds of things, whatever we want to change. Okay, so now we've seen this, let's take a look at adding a new property and see the new custom fields that we added into our custom post type. So what we have is the normal Gutenberg editor. At the top, you can see we've got the title. We've also got the content, which is the normal default fields that we spoke about. If we take a look on the right-hand side, we've got the featured image option and the excerpt option. So these are the features that we enabled when we created our custom post type. So under our settings section, you can see there's the 3 tabs we created: the basic information, the features, and the gallery. So all those are inside there. Now you can see I've got a spelling mistake or I've got a capitalization mistake at the beginning of basic information. As with all these things, we can simply go back in and update the details. So let's come back inside here. Let's open up this section. We'll put the capital back in there, which is missing. We'll update our post type, hop back over and refresh our page. And we should see there's our spelling or our grammatic error all sorted out. So now what we can do is we can simply go through and fill out these boxes to create and add a new property. So I'm going to quickly go ahead and do exactly that. I'm not going to bore you by making you watch me do it. I'm going to speed everything up just so we can get some information in there, but you can still see what I'm doing. So there's all the details inserted in. All we need to do is hit publish and we'll just confirm this. And that's our first property added into Jet Engine. So let's come back out of this and you can see now there's our featured image. There's the name of the property, the price, the number of bedrooms, bathrooms, and the date it was published. So everything is listed inside here using Jet Engine and all the core features we have as part of Jet Engine itself. I've already gone ahead, added another property in, and I'm just going to demonstrate some of the other things we set up as part of our admin columns before we wrap this up. So you can see our price, bedrooms and bathrooms. If I hover over those, I get a little arrow pointing up. What I can do is I can click on this and then we can sort these based upon the price, the bedrooms, for example. You can see we can set those to be ascending or descending, and the same goes with the bathrooms. So we can very easily use these to sort based upon the price, the number of bathrooms, the number of bedrooms, and so on through the dashboard of WordPress with our custom post type. Really easy to set up, but worth taking the time to go ahead and actually do this and make various different columns sortable, because it can just make finding things in the dashboard so much quicker and easier. Now you have a solid foundation in using Crocoblock Jet Engine's basic functions, you should be well on your way to building dynamic websites with custom post types and custom meta fields. Now to continue learning, click this link next. It'll help you get so much more out of Jet Engine. Now if you found this video useful, please consider hitting that thumbs up button. It really does help me out. However, if you didn't find the video useful, well, feel free to hit the thumbs down button twice, as that seems to work pretty well too. My name is Paul C, this is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.